Greetings and welcome. This is the first of 4 videos that I'm posting on the Facebook page Beyond Question for use of the book Beyond Question that you'll probably be using during Lent. And I wanted to give you some background information on that to make its usability of most help to you during the season of Lent. Not only for preaching this series, but also as we go through these 4 sessions, about 30-35 minutes each of 4, you'll see that this whole Beyond Question thing is not just a sermon series to preach, rather it's a concept. It's more of a concept. So keep remembering that issue, that this is more of a concept that you'll preach and live into and teach. Eventually it will help resolve all kinds of issues, I think, with congregational life and strife. We'll talk about that in the next section. It'll help your congregation and your council to ask empowering, solution-based questions based on the way that Jesus asked questions in the Gospels as a methodology for deepening discipleship. Those are words that you'll be very familiar with as we go through these sessions. Jesus asked questions as a methodology for deepening discipleship, and so this is a transformative personal journey through Lent. I think it's going to be very helpful, and these sessions are to help you with the book based on a course that I taught back at Luther Seminary on January 14th, 15th, and 16th, a 12-hour course. And there were 8 sessions for that course, and what I'll be doing in these 4 sessions for this Facebook page are summarizing those 12 hours, contact hours of continuing ed, into 4 sessions of about 30-35 minutes each. We'll be looking through lessons 1 and 2, then 3 and 4, then 5 and 6, and then 7 and 8. And you'll be able to kind of get a feel for at least the teaching material for the course. At the course, I gave to each student a booklet, a bound booklet. What will be helpful for you as we go through these 4 sessions here for the Facebook page is to go to the files of the Facebook group and run off the Beyond Question Lenten Preaching and Worship Workshop. It's about 70 pages, but I will be making reference to that on a regular basis, page number so-and-so. I suppose you could look at it online. You might have to change the view. The view is like this. You might want to change it like that. That's under the view. But it would be most helpful if you ran off those 70 pages. I'll also be making reference as we go through the book itself, pretty much chapter by chapter, and question by question. There's also a file up there called Video Talks. When I did Beyond Question last year, beta tested it really here at Zion Lutheran in Redmond, Oregon, not Washington, God's country, Central Oregon, mountains, fields, streams, hiking, kayaking, it's amazing, and great people at Zion Lutheran Church. As I beta tested this last year, I made a video blog. You'll see reference to that in the material at beyondquestionseries.blogspot.com, and each day did a video, 5-7 minute video related to each one of the chapters and the questions in the book, and then I posted it that way. In the files of the Facebook group, under Beyond whatever Video Talks, you might also run that off, because that's what I'll be making reference to as we go through this session. So it's kind of a 15,000-foot flyover, and then you can, with what's presented in the book, the concept of Beyond Question and the video talks and the material, you should be able to pretty easily create a sermon series during Lent on Sundays or Wednesdays using the book. Having said that, let me make one comment. As you're watching this, it's most helpful not to just, I'm not trying for book sales. It's not a big thing. I don't get a commission from this. It was a contract writing, so it doesn't matter how many books people buy. But for maximum impact of this series, it's most helpful to have the greatest amount of people in your congregation reading the book. If you can, offer the book for sale $9 or $10 or something like that. It'll provide something for people to go through. And I really do think that people will return to the concept of Beyond Question again and again. So the book for each, as many people in the congregation as you can encourage them to buy, the book will be very helpful. So what I'm going to do is go through the material that I gave to the class. If you can print that out, that would be great. I'll be making references to page numbers, which are at the top of the page, and the worship helps that I wrote for Augsburg. Those are also included in here. So why don't we start? My name is Eric Burtness, and I have been at Zion Lutheran here in Redmond for 2 years, just loving this congregation. I wrote 2 previous books. One of them was A Life Worth Leading, which had to do with, one of them was Leading on Purpose, kind of dealing with putting the purpose-driven church into a Lutheran context. The other one was A Life Worth Leading, which was really putting purpose-driven life in a Lutheran setting. Both of those kind of built into or have concepts for what we're talking about, kind of a cohesive piece. If you're wanting to do some of this stuff, once we get through the Beyond Question, with your church council in terms of reorganizing congregational life to be much more effective, efficient in proclaiming the gospel, really consider this book, Leading on Purpose, but you can be in touch with me later about that. I just wanted to make reference to those 2 because they're kind of part of a 3-part series or trilogy in a sense, from church to personal life. So consider those. Page 2 of the book, that explains a little bit of the concept of Beyond Question and the use of questions as a methodology for deepening discipleship. You might want to read through that. Maybe even pause this video and read through those first couple of pages. The book's point of view in that first paragraph there, Jesus used questions as a methodology for deepening discipleship. Through his use of questions, Jesus sought to change the lives and the hearts of those who followed him in such a way that they became more fully devoted followers. That's kind of a thing, kind of a concept, a mission statement that I think we all are a part of, to develop fully devoted disciples of Jesus Christ. That's kind of a mission statement for pastors, I think. Help them develop their lives of discipleship and their hearts for following Jesus. By examining the way in which Jesus asked questions, we'll be able to discover his methodology for personal transformation and discipleship. Next paragraph, just briefly. The position of this book is that Jesus does not ask questions for simple answers. Rather, he asks questions to reposition you, to challenge your image of God and your place in the world, and to present you with new and creative possibilities for personal transformation. He asks probing, realigning, transformative questions in order to change core convictions and to produce behavioral results. You might want to underline that. In the one to whom the question is being asked. The purpose of this book is to experience a transformative personal journey through Lent. There's a lot in that first page there about the ability of good questions to transform us. Good questions shift our perspective, and all of a sudden we're offered new and fresh ways of looking at and resolving the issues that are in front of us. If you go to beyondquestionseries.blogspot.com and go to the first video there, I tell a little bit more about the importance of asking good questions, because you'll hear a number of times the questions that we ask ourselves determine the answers that we receive. And if that's true, then it's very important to ask good questions. If our brain is like a massive Google search engine or ask.com, you go to ask.com and you type in a question, any kind of question, and ask.com in 1.3 seconds searches multiple databanks and gives you all kinds of answers. If that's true of ask.com, it's also true of your brain. When you ask your brain questions like, what should I do today? What's the meaning of life? Well, how should I treat my spouse? It Googles the answer and gives you back, either an empowering solution-based question, which is what this series is about, or the kind of answer that will just spiral you down. You'll hear more about that in the next couple of moments. Turn to page 3. The behavioral results of asking empowering questions. Let's think about, just reading there halfway down, let's think about a few foundational convictions for the concept of beyond question. First, we're responsible for our own emotions. We are not victims of our circumstance. Rather, we are the ones who determine how we will respond to circumstances that life deals us. We all, just read through the rest of that. We're responsible for our own emotions. Fundamental conviction of this book is that far too often we outsource our emotions. Think about that. He made me so angry. He made me so angry. How do you make someone angry unless you are willing to give up your emotions to the control of someone else? Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning, that old foundational book, said that they could take away everything from him except his ability to respond to the circumstances around him. Very important. The third paragraph on page 3, bottom of page 3. I personally learned the important lesson in this whole series. The questions you ask determine the answers you receive, so it's really important to ask good questions. Ask empowering questions gives you an empowered life. If you want to transform your life, ask transformational questions. If you want to empower your life, ask empowering questions. Fundamental conviction, what I mean by this is that beyond question is a concept. You need to grasp that concept in order to have this series come alive in your life and in your congregation, because it's so important to ask empowering solution-based questions. Underline that in your mind. And part of the challenges in that is that sometimes we think that pastors are supposed to be the answer man, the answer woman. Come to the pastor, he'll answer your questions. Well, what if the pastor were one that helped you ask good, transformative, empowering kinds of questions? How can I make it through this situation in life? How can I face job loss? How can I face divorce? How can I face all of the kind of difficult things that are facing me? Instead of, why is this happening? We'll talk about that in a moment. You ask, well, what can I do next week to make my life work better for me? So asking empowering questions, and a result of that, the behavioral results of asking empowering questions. Page 4. Page 4. If you ask yourself the question, why can't I lose weight? Your brain search engine will Google it and immediately will answer because you eat too many Twinkies, you ding dong, because you don't exercise enough, because you lack commitment, because you've always been fat. Ask yourself a why question, and that's what you get. Second kind of questions are the ones that fill you up. If you just read that paragraph, it just fills you up with information. First kind of questions spiral you down. The second kind of question fill you up. Third kind of questions are the questions that draw you out. That draw you out. The kinds of questions that Jesus asked. Those are the kinds of questions normally that begin with the word how or what. They're solution-based, empowering kinds of questions. Keep that in mind as we go through this, because that's a concept behind Beyond Question. Page 5. There's a fascinating book, fascinating, by Marilee Adams, Change Your Questions, Change Your Life. It's in the bibliography at the back of the handout. Fascinating. Fascinating. Read through the top pages there. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with this because this is something really for you to work through and think about and see how it relates to your life and your congregation and your pastoral leadership. It's a way of differentiating between judger and learner kinds of questions on page 5. Look at the different questions here. What's wrong is a judger question. It's a blame question. It's an outsourcing of responsibility question. What's wrong? Who did this that got us in the mess that we're in? Who's to blame for what's happening in our world? Learner question is what works? What am I, extremely pragmatic. What works? What am I responsible for? What do I want? What can I learn? Look at the differentiation there between a judger and a learner. Toward the bottom of the page, with a judger mindset, the future can only be a recycled version of the past. Do I want to keep doing what I've done that got me where I am, that I don't like where I am, or do I want to change my questions, get empowering solution-based answers, and start to make a difference? Bottom of that, page 5. Consequently, it's important to accept judger and practice learner moment by moment. Blame gets us stuck in the past. It's my firm conviction, experience, that oftentimes in congregational life or in ELCA church life, what we do is we find out which sandbox the other person is in by asking why kind of questions instead of solution-based empowering questions. And once we find out by some kind of characterization which sandbox the other person is in, then the only result we can have is to throw sand from our sandbox into their sandbox. Because it's an either or. It's not a both and. It's not a learning together. It's a blame. It's lack of taking responsibility. It's if those people would just think the way I think, then everything would be better. Instead of throwing sand at each other by defining which sandbox we were in, perhaps we can start to ask empowering solution-based questions and make progress with people with whom we might agree on some things, but which we might be able to find commonality with them. Page 6, mindset. You can read through those. Judgmental, reactive, blame, know-it-all, inflexible, rigid as a judger. Sound like anybody you know? Sound like anybody in your congregation? Or the learner? Look on the other side there. Responsive, thoughtful, responsible, flexible, inquisitive. Relationships, look at the difference there. Win-lose. Win-lose. On the ELCA clergy page on Facebook, drives me crazy to read through so many of the comments there because people want to debate. People want to win because if they win, that means they lose. Well, win-lose, I think, is by definition lose-lose. If you win and beat somebody up, do you really win? I mean, with all kinds of things that have happened in our past church life, the whole win-lose mentality is just crazy. Why not be able to find a way for a win-win? Anyway, that's just a personal bias, which I don't have any feelings about. Bottom of the page, ABCC choice, aware, breathe, curiosity, choose. Congregational life, page 7, think of those questions there. If you've run this off, just take some notes, maybe run this video again, just take some time to live into some of the things that are going there. Page 8. Fascinating. Just spend some time looking at that with the learner path and a judger path, and notice that early on in a conversation with somebody maybe with whom you disagree, you kind of early on start to choose one of the paths. If you choose the judger path, you end up in the judger pit. I mean, it just kind of spirals down. Conversations with a win-lose, blame, who's responsible, ends you up in a judger pit, and both of you lose. On the learner path, that's just very helpful for congregational life. You might even run copies of some of that. Buy a copy of Change Your Questions, Change Your Life. Talk about this with your church council. See what you might do with this. Conceptually, I've used this with our church council at Zion, this kind of mindset. It's amazing. Oh my goodness, it's amazing how much progress we've made at Zion Lutheran in Redmond from a congregation that was severely conflicted on different sides of the issue, from a congregational nuclear bomb in 2008, when it was this side, that side, it was one for the pastors once again. I mean, it was a mess. It was a mess. All of the judger stuff, who's responsible? I came to Zion 2 years ago and started in a very non-anxious presence kind of way, which we'll talk about in a moment, just kind of working through things, asking questions and all of that. And part of the result of that, the behavioral results of that, is that we had an annual meeting yesterday, which was just, seriously, just a love fest. People are challenged, they're giving, they're attending, they're all kinds of different things, but their questions, their empowering solution-based questions, has been changed to that rather than the judger mindset. Think about that. It's a concept more than it is a simple preach this and we'll be done with it, we'll put away, nothing will change. I think, from my personal perspective and experience, preach this stuff. Read it with your church council. At least buy books for your church council, at the very least. Be in touch with them every day. Send them a daily email. What do you think about this? Kind of start a conversation about this concept. And in my mind, you start this concept during Lent. You look at the way Jesus asked solution-based, empowering questions. After Easter, you put together a long-range vision team or whatever it might be. Take some plans during the summer and start to change your congregational life starting in September. I believe in this stuff so strongly. Anyway, you'd never know that. You'd never know that from this video. Page 9. First week, what are you looking for? The way that I organize the handout is I put the question there. It's a question of identity. What are you looking for? And I left a blank page on page 9 just for your notes there. Page 10, here's what I did, page 10, 11, and 12. When I was working on this concept of Beyond Question quite a while ago, a couple years ago, I got the books that are in the bibliography because I was just fascinated by this concept of Beyond Question that was kind of in its infancy stage. I had a dozen books or something like that, and I went through each one of them related to these questions, especially these main ones, and I summarized what they were, put it all in a Word doc and put it all in this handout here. So that's what you have here. A little bit of halfway down page 10, I write about Garrison. He's one of the authors, and just kind of summarize the next page, Garganzilla, and all that stuff. It's just kind of notes for you as you prepare sermons. So what are you looking for is a transformative question that comes from the first words of Jesus in the Gospel of John. The disciples come to him. Jesus doesn't say something religious like, "Man, I'm the bread of life. I am the shepherd of the good sheep." He doesn't talk religious stuff. He says, "Dudes, what you looking for? What are you looking for?" Halfway down that page, what you are looking for tells a story of who you are. What you're looking for tells a story of who you are. Think about that. Have that roll around in your mind for a while. Because it is above that. Some people live life on 3 levels. Survival, success, significance. If you're looking for each one of those 3, it really tells a story of who you are, who your values are, how you spend your time in order to accomplish that search for each one of them. So what you're looking for tells a story of who you are. Bottom half of page 10, Garrison, there's some notes there. Page 11, Gianzilla, whatever it is, Godzilla, some possible themes there about motives and what you're looking for. Page 12, Jesus says, what are you looking for in all of the 4 Gospels? It's a very important question. What are you looking for? I know that we're Lutherans and our standard answer is, oh, Jesus is looking for us. Obviously that's true. But what are you looking for? What are you looking for? And then kind of a corollary question, how are you going to know when you found it? What are you looking for? And then how are you going to know when you found it? Bunch of videos that are good for this. That's what faith can do, is on a worship life. Look at page 13. What are you looking for? And I'm going to flip to the part where I did the video talks from the first time I did that. We'll kind of flip back and forth. If you have the book, that's most helpful. Turn to the part, what are you looking for? Read through that devotion. So you've got three things in front of you. The booklet that I'm talking about, you have the book itself, and then the Beyond Question video talks. I'm going to just skim over a lot of this, because one of the questions, what are you looking for, is important to ask people as they enter into Ash Wednesday. If you're going to be preaching that on Ash Wednesday or the first Sunday in Lent, what are you looking for in Lent? I mean, what kind of spiritual journey is this going to be? And if you're going to go on a journey, if it truly is a journey, what are you packing for the journey? What are you willing to take along or leave behind on the journey? You can play on that faith journey a lot as you enter into this, because one of the things that it involves is preparation. Nobody would plan a vacation without kind of preparing for, you'd plan an itinerary. You'd plan where you're going to go, how long you're going to stay. In a very real way, this whole Lenten journey issue, ask people right away, Ash Wednesday or the first Sunday in Lent, what are you looking for? What are you willing to take with you, and what do you want to leave behind? What you are looking for. Day 2 is a woman with the flow of blood when she says, who touched me? Fascinating journey. Fascinating. Jesus says, who touched me? We can look at ourselves. We are that woman. And one of the fascinating things too in that journey is that this woman who had given everything that she had to be healed by these doctors, none of it worked. She still had this hemorrhaging. She asked herself the question, think about this, she asked herself the question, what do I need to do to get well? What do I need to do to get well? She had asked herself far too long, why is this happening? Why can't the doctors heal me? Why have I spent all my money? She finally asked, what do I need to do to get well? The answer that she received is that if I can just reach out and touch the hem of his garment, I'm going to be saved. I'm going to be healed. Batters through the crowds, touching, bumping off people, making them all unclean. She finally reaches out and just touches the hem of his garment, and Jesus says, who touched me? Because he wanted to draw out in the heart of the person who was wondering that question, who touched me? So she goes, you know the story. It's a powerful story of what faith can do. Day 3 is the question, what can you return to your life? Just read through that. Success, significance, survival. One of the things on page 4 of the book, one of the things that I did early on in this series is middle of page 4. What approach to your life and the questions to ponder? Consider saying this to yourself each day during this Lenten journey. I'm a child of God who belongs to God, believes in God, and will become the child that God created me to be. One of the things that I did when I did this series, 2012, is I ran off little cards that you get from Costco or Office Depot, and I had that sentence printed on there, and I had the address of the church and my name and email and whatever. I handed it out to people, and I said, take a couple of these, put it on your mirror in the morning, put it on your dashboard, put it in your wallet. Just keep repeating it to yourself day after day, because then when you come across a situation which frustrates you or you don't know what to do, you just say, I'm a child of God who believes in God, belongs to God, and will become the child that God created me to be. And all of a sudden it starts to change your brain pattern to put yourself knowing that you're a child of God who belongs to God, believes in God, and will become the child that God created you to be. It starts to rewire your brain in such a way that you approach anger management, relationships, all kinds of stuff in a different way. So, consider that. Page 4 in the book. Do you wish to go away? One day Alice was walking along the path. She comes to the Cheshire Cat. Which path do I take? Where do you want to go? I don't know where I want to go. Then it doesn't matter which path you take. Foundational story for me. Not all paths lead to the same direction, so it's kind of important to know which path you're going to be on. I think many times people just wander through life, kind of like a pinball machine, you know, bouncing off one and bumper and then the other, drop into the hole, go to bed at night, get up in the morning, start the whole thing all over again. Well, if you don't know where you eventually want to end up, it doesn't matter which path you take. But if you do know, it matters a great deal which path you take. Day 4 is the whole discipleship dropout. Fascinating on page day 4, sorry about this. Jesus says, do you wish to go away? We just were talking about that, but look at a study on John chapter 6. Read through John chapter 6. Fascinating story where Jesus gets a little more clear, and then disciples start to leave him. I make reference to discipleship dropout. Do you ever get that in church, where people kind of follow along for a while, they're going to church, they're serving on church council, and then they have discipleship dropout? There's only a few things that bother me more, as being a pastor for a long time, of discipleship dropout. You know, you kind of keep them close to the church and what you're doing for a while, and then they just drop out. They become inactive or whatever. Once there's discipleship dropout, it's almost impossible to get them back. So many churches focus on, we need to visit the inactives. Well, once they've become inactive, once they've decided to go away, you're not getting them back. It takes so much to get them back, and oftentimes you just can't. So discipleship dropout is a huge thing. Day 5, what are you looking, day 5 is, do you want to be made well? Important chapter, kind of a foundational chapter. Read through this and really get what's going on there with Jesus at the pool of Siloam. Contrast it, compare it to the woman Susan, who was leading a life of drink and excess until she started to change her questions. Read through in John chapter 5, the guy at the pool of Siloam. He's been there 38 years. 38 years. Jesus says to him, focuses on this one guy amidst all these other people who also want to be made well. Jesus focuses on this one guy and says, do you want to be made well? What an absurd question. Of course he does. But what he says is, well, you know, when whatever is happening in the water is stirred up, nobody's helped me down in the water. He wants to do it yourself faith. You could do a whole sermon on that. Do it yourself faith instead of relying on Jesus. Jesus says, you know, your faith has made you well. The whole thing. I mean, it's a fascinating story. I'm not going to do the exegetical work because you have your own way of doing that. Jesus saw him. He knew him. He asked him this question because he wanted to change the heart of the hearer, the one to whom Jesus was asking the question. Big thing in there is that part of the reason Jesus was asking him, do you want to be made well? You may know as well as I do, some people don't want to be made well. When Jesus asked the question, do you want to be made well? Wasn't done in a manipulative way. It was asked in such a way that maybe the guy said, well, I'm pretty comfortable. And I know this stuff pretty well. It's been 38 years, kind of gotten used to it. Hot dog stand comes at noon. You know, my family comes and visits me, and I become pretty comfortable in my illness, in my ill health. Jesus says to him, do you want to be made well? And are you willing to do what it takes to be made well? So that's kind of a foundational thing. If you run off in the files on his Facebook group, if you run off the Beyond video talks, you'll be able to see some of the things that I did with that. So that's on day 5. Day 6, what are you looking for? Whom are you looking for? Fascinating question. We'll return to that question toward the end of this journey. Whom are you looking for is a question that brought Mary life. That's the end of the first section. It summarized a number of hours actually that I spent with the class. Going back to your booklet on page 13, you might want to just take notes there. And then page 14 and 15, 16, those are the worship helps related to this. Lots of different examples. Page 15, there's a lot of hymn and song suggestions for worship. There are some ELW and some LBW with one voice, but there's also some more contemporary songs that I think tie into that. On page 15, How Many Kings is an awesome song. Check that out on YouTube. What Faith Can Do, that's What Faith Can Do. I mean, there's some great stuff there. So, we're going to take a break, and I will come back for the second video for sessions 3 and 4. I hope you're continuing to join me. Put notes in the Facebook group this is where I'm posting this. Put notes in the Facebook group. There's already a whole lot of stuff there. There are some outlines that people are working with, hymn and song suggestions. And then once you've watched this, if you haven't been to the class, which most of the people in the group have not, make comments in the group. How are you using this? It's a flat world. It's a flat world. We need to resource and network, and so put on some of the things you're thinking about. I will pause, and we will start then with the second of these 4 videos. Take care. Hope this is helpful. Bye-bye.